The idea of birthright citizenship is, at its heart, a simple one. It is a legal principle known as a Latin term that translates to right of the soil. This principle holds that a person's nationality is determined by their place of birth. If you are born within the borders of a country that follows this rule, you are automatically a citizen of that country, regardless of your parents' citizenship or immigration status. It is a straightforward, geographical promise. The ground beneath a newborn's feet is what matters most. This concept stands in contrast to another principle, or right of blood, where citizenship is inherited from one's parents. This concept is deeply embedded in the American story. It means that the child of a tourist visiting New York City, or the child of an immigrant family who has not yet become a citizen, is just as American as the child of a family that has lived in the country for generations. This automatic grant of citizenship is not a gift that can be given or taken away by a government official. It is a right established at the moment of birth. It has shaped the nation's identity, creating a society where belonging is not exclusively tied to ancestry or ethnic origin, but to a shared place. The principle acts as a powerful engine for assimilation and integration, turning newcomers into members of the national community. The simplicity of is also its most profound feature. It avoids creating complex, multi-generational classes of non-citizens living within a nation's borders. In countries without birthright citizenship, it is possible for families to live and work for decades or even for generations without their children ever gaining citizenship in the land they call home. This can lead to communities of people who are permanent outsiders, lacking fundamental rights like the right to vote, access to certain jobs, or the ability to hold a passport from the country where they have spent their entire lives. The American model, by contrast, ensures a path to full participation is open from day one. This principle, however, is not without its critics or its complexities. Debates often arise about whether the rule should apply to the children of undocumented immigrants, with some arguing that it encourages illegal immigration. These discussions force a constant re-examination of what it means to be an American and who should be included in the national family. The history of how this simple idea became a cornerstone of American law is a story of revolution, civil war, and the ongoing struggle to define the boundaries of belonging. It is a story written not just in law books, but in the lives of millions who became Americans simply by being born on American soil. The roots of American birthright citizenship stretch back across the Atlantic Ocean, deep into English common law. Long before the United States existed, the Kingdom of England operated under the principle of. This was a practical rule tied to the feudal system, where allegiance was owed to the monarch who controlled the land. If you were born on the king's land, you were the king's subject. It was a simple territorial definition of belonging. When English colonists traveled to North America, they brought this legal tradition with them, like a piece of invisible luggage. It became the default system in the 13 colonies, shaping who was considered a member of the community. After the American Revolution, the newly formed United States had to decide which English laws to keep and which to discard. The concept of birthright citizenship was largely retained, though its philosophical underpinnings shifted. It was no longer about allegiance to a king, but about membership in a new republic founded on the consent of the governed. Early legal interpretations in court cases in the young nation generally upheld the idea that birth within the country's borders conferred citizenship. It was seen as a natural and logical way to build a nation of citizens from a diverse population of immigrants and their descendants, ensuring the new country would have a stable and growing populace. However, the application of this principle was tragically incomplete and contradictory from the very beginning. The promise of birthright citizenship did not extend to all people born on American soil. Two major groups were explicitly excluded. Enslaved African Americans, considered property under the law, were denied the rights of citizenship despite being born in the United States. Similarly, most Native Americans were not considered citizens. They were viewed as members of separate, sovereign tribal nations. This created a fractured system where the right of the soil applied to some but was cruelly denied to others, revealing the deep hypocrisy at the heart of the nation's early ideals. This inconsistency set the stage for one of the most significant constitutional battles in American history. The infamous Supreme Court case of 1857 brought this conflict to a head. The court ruled that African Americans, whether enslaved or free, could never be citizens of the United States. Chief Justice Roger B. Taney argued that they were beings of an inferior order and had no rights which the white man was bound to respect. This decision not only denied citizenship to millions but also declared that the principle of birthright citizenship did not and could not apply to black people, pushing the nation ever closer to the brink of civil war. The Civil War was fought in large part over the question of slavery and the fundamental issue of who belonged in the American Republic. The Union victory brought an end to slavery with the 13th Amendment, but it did not resolve the question of citizenship for the millions of formerly enslaved people. In the aftermath of the war, a new and powerful legal instrument was needed to overturn the decision and formally establish the rights of black Americans. This need gave rise to the 14th Amendment to the Constitution, which was ratified on July 9, 1868. It remains one of the most consequential amendments ever passed. The amendment's first sentence, known as the Citizenship Clause, is direct and revolutionary. It states, "All persons born or naturalized in the United States, and subject to the jurisdiction thereof, are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside." This language was deliberately chosen to provide a clear national standard for citizenship. It explicitly overruled the decision by constitutionally guaranteeing that birth on U.S. soil conferred citizenship. The phrase "subject to the jurisdiction thereof" was intended primarily to exclude the children of foreign diplomats and soldiers of an occupying enemy force, who remain under the jurisdiction of their own governments. The importance of the 14th Amendment cannot be overstated. It transformed the Constitution by embedding the principle of birthright citizenship directly into the nation's foundational legal document. This meant that the right could no longer be easily denied by individual states or discriminatory court rulings. It was a promise of equality, intended to ensure that the newly freed slaves would be recognized as full members of the nation they and their ancestors had helped to build. The amendment aimed to create a single unified class of American citizenship, where rights did not depend on race, color, or previous condition of servitude. It was a monumental step toward fulfilling the nation's founding ideals. While the amendment was a landmark achievement, its promise took many decades to be fully realized. In 1898, the Supreme Court case affirmed that the Citizenship Clause applied to the U.S.-born child of Chinese immigrants who were legally barred from becoming citizens themselves. This ruling solidified the broad interpretation of the amendment, confirming that it applied to the children of all immigrants, regardless of their parents' nationality or race. However, it is important to note that Native Americans were still largely excluded and were not granted universal citizenship by Congress until the Indian Citizenship Act of 1924. Today, the United States is an outlier when it comes to its practice of birthright citizenship. While the principle of was once more common, most of the world has moved away from it. The majority of countries, particularly in Europe and Asia, now follow the principle of, or right of blood. In these nations, citizenship is passed down from a parent to a child. A baby born in Germany, for example, is not automatically a German citizen unless at least one parent is a German citizen, or has been a legal resident for a certain number of years. This approach ties national identity directly to lineage and ancestry. In contrast, the United States is one of only about 30 countries in the world that offer unconditional birthright citizenship to nearly anyone born within its borders. Most of these countries are located in the Western Hemisphere. Nations like Canada, Mexico, Brazil, and Argentina share this tradition with the U.S. This common practice across the Americas is largely a legacy of European colonization and the subsequent desire of these new nations to populate vast territories and encourage immigration. They sought to build their populations by transforming newcomers and their children into citizens, rather than relying solely on old-world bloodlines for national identity. This difference in legal traditions creates vastly different social outcomes. In countries without, it is possible for families to be long-term residents for multiple generations without ever becoming citizens. This can lead to the creation of a permanent underclass of non-citizens who may lack access to public education, healthcare, and political participation, despite having no connection to any other country. Japan, for instance, follows a strict model, which has contributed to challenges in integrating its long-standing ethnic Korean population. The American system, by design, prevents this kind of inherited statelessness within its borders. The ongoing debate in the United States over birthright citizenship reflects this global divide. Proponents argue that it is a fundamental part of American identity, a powerful tool for assimilation, and a moral commitment to equality. They believe it prevents the social instability that arises from having a large, disenfranchised population. Opponents, on the other hand, often point to the rest of the world and argue that the U.S. should adopt a more restrictive model, similar to that of most other developed nations. They contend that unconditional acts as a magnet for illegal immigration. This debate ensures that the principle established after the Civil War remains a vital and contested part of the American experiment.